And that's why land ceremony is so important, because if we want to see the manifestation of the new earth, then it's literal. We need new earth. There's two ways that's going to happen. One way is Gaia's way, which is volcanoes and earthquakes, or humans come into ceremony and do the work on the soils, which I will say is also work on the self. Because, you know, the more Land Tantra I do, the more I realize that really we're providing the human component in this process that is happening anyway. And
Yes.
the Land Tantra is happening on us.
Welcome to New Earth Podcast, where we dive into inspiring stories, profound wisdom, and insights from remarkable individuals who are driving the consciousness shift on our planet. If you're ready to elevate your awareness and well-being, you're in the right place. But before we dive into today's episode, be sure to hit that subscribe button and join our growing community. Together, we'll continue to explore the ideas and conversations that help you up-level your consciousness. Thank you so much for your support and your comments and for being part of this journey. Hello and welcome back to New Earth Co-Creators. Today, I'm totally delighted to welcome the lovely Kahreela An-Ra to the podcast. She is a channel, an alchemist, and a Land Tantra practitioner. And today we're going to be exploring what it means to be in sacred relationship with the earth, to explore that we're not separate from the earth, but part of her living, breathing magic. Welcome, Kahreela. So delighted to have you on the podcast today.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
And it feels beautiful to be chatting with you about this because we've done some sacred, beautiful land work together in the Glastonbury, Avalon, Avesbury area. So it feels, this conversation actually feels really alive to me as well.
Yeah, it's I'm always really grateful when somebody's done Land Tantra because they understand it a bit more. And so and it was such a special time we had. It was such a special bit of Land Tantra that happened. And so yeah, I agree, it feels very, very alive.
Well, we'll dip into some of that because I think it's beautiful to bring in specific, because it must be so varied, the experiences that you have, like connecting with particular pieces of land and bringing in specific experiences. It'd be great to talk about that. But let's start with, what does it mean to you to be in sacred relationship with the land?
So I guess for me, we talk a lot about separation consciousness and us coming, and I actually believe we're coming out of the age of separation where everything in a way was being experienced through the filter of separation. And relationship is the opposite of separation. It's the medicine for separation consciousness. And for me, and I'm sure everybody that is in service in some way sees the importance of the thing that they are doing. But for me, one of the really important relationships that we need to cultivate is between humanity and Mother Earth. Because if you look at certainly Western culture, a lot of what you could describe as problems or distortions are partly because we are not in relationship with the Divine Mother.
Well, it's something that's been suppressed as well. If you look back to old cultures, ancient cultures, there was that relationship. And then in more modern times, with more modern spiritual practices, that's either been forgotten about or suppressed. So do you feel that this journey is almost like, rather than a learning, it's a remembering?
Yes, it's a remembering, but it's also a stepping up into our spiritual adulthood. The age of separation for me was very much, I perceive it as a teenagehood. And the teenage years are about developing your sovereignty. And so you kind of need extra separation when you're developing your sovereignty. If you think of teenagers and they're like really shaking their mothers and fathers off.
And
So
I mean, it's beautiful what you're saying, because what's coming up for me is like this feeling of like, I know everything,
yes.
which is kind of like the mindset in science and everything, isn't it?
Absolutely. And it's also like I'm gonna really explore who I am, and that's needed because it's the development of sovereignty. In childhood we're developing as beings in oneness with our families and our parents, and then there's the development of sovereignty. But then there's adulthood, which is where you come back into relationship as a sovereign being. And I feel that for modern day humans, part of us coming back into sacred relationship with the earth is us coming into adulthood and manifesting adulthood as well. One of the things that my guides often talk about is, they say, if in a way, if you're not in adulthood, then your manifestation ability is limited, because it's just like being at home. And it's like your parents are like, you eat what you're given, because you're not earning any money. When you earn some money, you can eat what you want to eat. And so in a way, it's like, as we come into adulthood, we also come into new levels of manifestation, new levels of responsibility, but also beauty, and new levels of relationship. And I feel that what I call the age of reflection, a lot of people call it the age of Aquarius, really is about us coming into our creational adulthood here.
It's beautiful that you brought in the word creation, because that is something that I associate very much with the land energy, with the divine feminine energy. It's very much that receptive, which is the reflection that you were talking about as well, that reflective, receptive, creative, fertile energy. And you mentioned manifestation, and that's really interesting, because a lot of people look to the heavens for manifestations. But I've done a lot of Taoist training, and my teacher always says, no, don't look to the heavens, look to the earth. And if you think about it, Mother Earth is bringing consciousness into form, which is what manifestation is. So it's very much, the bountiful, I live most of the time in Portugal, and you just see orange trees absolutely laden, and that sort of bountiful, creative, fertile energy is very, very present there. So do you feel part of the journey that you're working with and taking people on is about restoring that connection with our creative energy, with that divine feminine? I mean, people talk about that reawakening in our current time of the divine feminine. Do you feel that's part of the journey of reconnecting with the land?
Definitely. My guides say that creation is manifesting out of love. And we can manifest from other things. We do manifest from other things, and very much the divine feminine mystery school teachings are about learning creation, learning to manifest. from love and the laws of that. And the journey with, working with the land, you have to submit to the feminine laws when you journey with the land. And we have a lot to learn or a lot to remember, because these laws were very, very suppressed in the age of patriarchy, and the age of patriarchy disconnected us from our relationship with the Great Mother. And in order to come back into relationship with her, in my experience, you have to pilgrimage with her. You have to go on a journey with her. I don't know how else you can create relationship with Mother Earth if it isn't through ceremony and pilgrimage.
Beautiful. I'd love to talk about, you mentioned, the age of patriarchy and the separation that occurred. I'm really interested in what's being held in the land in terms of, all that separation, the conflict, the trauma. Is part of your work healing and clearing this, but also on another level, it's not just, that the land is so ancient. It's not just that's being held, the remembrance of the divine feminine, of the times when the land was honored, that is all held there as well. So is there sometimes you go to the land where you're healing and clearing, and other times where you're tapping into to help and support our remembering?
Yes.
Short answer.
I call Land Tantra gardening in the collective consciousness.
Yay.
And just like gardening, if you've ever gardened, there are times where you're weeding, and there's times where you're seeding, and there's times where you're building, and there's times where you're repairing. And so there are many different things that come under the umbrella of Land Tantra, and usually a journey is a combination of those things. So there's no point in seeding if you haven't weeded, and so it's an interesting thing, because I've had conversations with some people that are like, who are we to think that we can affect the collective consciousness? And I think it's important to remember that and stay humble when you're working on such big levels. But actually, we do have an effect. Humans are having an effect. We affect the field. We affect the vibration. We are not able to leave no trace. So we might as well leave the most beautiful trace, and when you are doing Land Tantra in service to Mother Earth, you're not actually doing what you think you should do. You're not planning the garden and controlling the garden. You are following her guidance on how to tend to what is needed and how to doula and support what she wants to have happen in the collective field.
Beautiful. Yeah, I love that you brought in the humility, because I feel that that's always so important in any kind of healing work, that we have that humility, and also we're talking about sacred relationships, so that honoring, if we're coming out, I'm gonna, it's kind of like much more the old model, isn't it? I'm gonna do this. But I loved that you brought in the gardening aspect as well, because that honoring of the cyclical is very much part of that remembering of the feminine, that honoring of the rhythms of life, honoring of the seasons. also, specific dates. And I'd be interested to talk with you about whether a lot of the work that you do is on specific kind of high energy times, moon or solstice, and this kind of thing. Because and does that add power to the work that you're doing?
Yes. So, every land project is different, but most of the time, Land Tantra is happening in conjunction with something astrological. And that is because the Land Tantra practitioners are doulas. So they're helping, they're being the conduits between Mother Earth and the cosmos in those moments. And they're helping what the cosmic forces are assisting happen on the deep levels of the collective and Gaia and the land. And there's also a timing thing, it's you can't bring in a baby born too soon is not a good thing. And so there's also this timing thing of things, the field, the collective, everything needing to be right for whatever you're planting. And if you come back to the gardening analogy, you plant seeds in the wrong season and they're not going to germinate. And so the sky very much dictates when the Land Tantra is happening. And sometimes that is foretold. So, for example, this summer, I worked with every one of the major planetary changes, and I knew that I was going to be in a different country. I didn't know which country, but I knew I was going to be in a different country for each of the planetary shifts. Whereas some other times, in March this year, I did a tour in Egypt, and my guides were like, do Egypt over the March equinox. And I said, great, I'm going to put it up. And I didn't really look into the astrology until nearer the time. And when I looked into the astrology, I swore at my guides. I was like, are you serious? Making me do a tour in Mercury retrograde and an eclipse window. Like,
oh wow,
like all of the things that are astrologically not necessarily known as being good for travel and things like that. But in the case of that tour, we absolutely needed the astrology to be what it was, and because it was aligned, it flowed. And I think they didn't tell me, because I would have been like, no.
Oh, and I mean, the astrology is just so ripe at this time for this work. And, this co-creation that you're talking about with Mother Earth, because we're shifting into the new earth. Mm-hmm. And my sense is that as we do that, we're upgrading. We're also moving into our body. It's an embodying process. But the earth is also upgrading as well. And so that co-creation with Mother Earth, it's just such a beautiful process. I mean, my understanding is as well, Kahreela, and I'd be interested to hear your understanding on this. If we're just receiving all the downloads from the astrology, from the solar flares, it actually can be quite unpalatable for us. If we just let it pass through us and then we download it or upload it from Mother Earth, it's actually much easier on our bodies. Is that something you have any awareness about?
I agree with you. Firstly, I'll say that I had this huge breakthrough. I was like, oh, new earth is new earth,
Yeah.
And I suddenly, after doing Land Tantra for years, I suddenly was like, oh, we actually need new soil. Like the way what's encoded in the soils of the past is not the foundation of the new earth. And that's why land ceremony is so important, because if we want to see the manifestation of the new earth, then it's literal. We need new earth. There's two ways that's going to happen. One way is Gaia's way, which is volcanoes and earthquakes, or humans come into ceremony and do the work on the soils, which I will say is also work on the self. Because, you know, the more Land Tantra I do, the more I realize that really we're providing the human component in this process that is happening anyway. And
Yes.
the Land Tantra is happening on us. And one of the greatest things about Land Tantra is that you cannot fake it. You know, if you are going to send a new code into the earth, you have to hold that code. And if you can't hold that code, you will not be there. There's too much guardianship of the land in the spirit world. And so what's beautiful about this type of inner work is that it has to be real in you. It has to be realized. You have to understand it. And life is going to put you through whatever you need to go through in order for you to be able to hold that new coding and be that conduit in that moment.
It's interesting that the phrase that's coming in for me is like, we're like acupuncture needles, you know, like bridging that between heaven and earth. And there's so many points that you made there that I could pick up on. Firstly, you spoke about the soil, you know, and the roots, you know, the ancestry, the guardians. How do you honor all of that in your work?
You know, it's different for different lands. And so the one thing that I would say is that all land is sacred, and every bit of land has guardians. And if you want to work with a land, you will have a journey with those guardians. And what those guardians are going to want from you more than anything else is they're going to want to know your heart. And they're going to want to know that your intention is to be of service. And there are different ways of doing that. But nearly every land has a point of initiation. And for me, and this is just my way, I am old school in the sense that I don't journey with land unless I have been to the point of initiation and asked for permission. And that's how you get into the magic of a place. And I like to do it that way because I feel like it honors the traditions and the ancestors and so on. But, you know, you have to be present, because when I say the soils are changing, even the gates are changing. One of the things that started to happen this year is old gates that were points of initiation are shutting and new gates.
I've heard that. Yeah. It's interesting.
And so, you know, the way the world is, the fabric of reality is changing at a very, very core level. And it's again why I love Land Tantra, because you have no choice but to be present. You have no choice. And present, I found out the root word of present recently, and it means to be at hand. And so if you want to do Land Tantra, then you need to be willing to be at hand to Mother Earth. and do what she says.
I just realized I haven't actually asked you yet, what is Land Tantra? Because this to me is the new concept. It sounds intimate, it sounds raw, it sounds elemental. I've always heard of land work. Why are you calling this Land Tantra?
Because so I used to call it land work as well, and I've done it for years as land work, and my guides have said, and not just my guides, many channels in the last couple of years have started to say to me that land tantra is, or land work is how they were describing it 2 years ago, is the next thing that humanity needs to do. So it's the next medicine for humanity in terms of the waves of our ascension. And the next cycle, the next 12 years, it's very important that there is lots of ceremony with the land and lots of building relationship with the land. And I was being guided to start talking about land work, but I was being told not to call it land work. They were like, nobody will come. What to do it? It's work. And it's fair. Land work also, I understand it has connotations of like quarrying and stuff.
Right.
And so me and Solara and a friend of mine were all driving. I believe you've interviewed Solara. We were all driving to Stonehenge. And I was saying this and I was like, I just don't know what to call it. And we're trying all of these different words out, all of us having done a lot of land work. And Solara suddenly said, what about Land Tantra? And this energy just came into the car.
Yay.
And, I really believe that Tantra is the only word that I can think of that encapsulates
Right.
everything that is covered in land work. Because just like Tantra, true Tantra, land work involves intimacy, relationship, listening, shadow work, energy work, life force energy. It covers such a broad spectrum. And actually, my guide's definition of Tantra is it is the dance of sovereignty and oneness.
Beautiful.
Of the dance of sovereignty and oneness. And when we're doing land tantra, we're dancing in sovereignty and oneness with Mother Earth and the guides, and so there is no other word that can describe what land that can cover everything that land tantra is.
That's beautiful. I'd love to know, I know it must look different with every kind of initiation or with every journey that you make, but what are the key components? Because you're a channeler, are you bringing in the elementals, the fairies, dragons? Are you bringing through certain energies? Are there sort of component pieces? Are you called to land, or do you decide that you're going to a certain place? How does that look, that whole process, in a practical way?
So the guides change. So the guides really depend on the land. I mean, I obviously have my guides that are part of my support network that are often part of it. But one of the beautiful things about working with many lands is you meet many guides, because different lands have different and different projects do. I think it's worth saying that certainly with my work, I have projects that can go over many years, and these projects they can cover many different lands, and actually you don't really know. It's amazing to me the long view of these projects and how intelligent spirit and the land is, because you almost don't really understand what you're doing until you get to the end of the project and you see what the project was actually about. And so there are guides that are committed to whole projects, and so they're not necessarily connected to a specific land, but they're overseeing the whole project, or they're working with the whole. For example, I have a project that is deeply rooted into the fairy kingdom and their work, and so they come up in many different land projects, or many different lands in relation to this project. But they're actually working for the project, if that makes sense. And then in terms of components, I only work with lands that call me, and I actually have to be quite called by a land. I like to be really certain of the work being in alignment. And so for me, I have quite a big journey with the land calling me. Once I'm in a project, sometimes I kind of know that I know what's coming, because I know what enough about the project to know that we're going to be working with Egypt and England, or so I know the lands that are ahead. But for a project to call, I would like to be able to just be like, oh, I'm going to go here and do this here, and you could, but I prefer to land work's huge. It's hard work. It's heavy lifting energetically, and I would rather do it in the greatest possible alignment. And so they call. I go to the lands that call.
I had Rory Duff on the podcast. I don't know if you know of his work. He's amazing. He's mapped more ley lines, I believe, than he's a geobiologist, I believe, and he's mapped more ley lines than anybody else on this planet. I'm going to put a link to his video as well in the comments, in the description. But one of the things that he spoke about that I'm feeling to talk with you about here is he spoke about the power of groups coming together on the land, particularly if they are power points such as ley lines, and the collaboration that starts to happen, and how it is not just a case of you, Kahreela, coming, excuse me, coming with your kind of downloads. Each individual has a piece of the puzzle, and each individual is there for a reason, and supports that unraveling and co-creation that starts to happen. Is that something that you've experienced in your work? I know certainly our recent journey with Solara, with the beautiful Solara, that was very much, I felt, part of the experience.
Absolutely. I do know people who land work on their own and they go off, and sometimes I'm guided to just go and do something. And so it's not that you can't work on your own, but at this time, when we're seeding new soils that are not in separation, there's huge power in group. There's huge, part of the best coding that happens is through humans living it in real time, leaving that footprint in the earth, in it, living love and compassion and collaboration and prayer and all of this stuff. And so there's that. Secondly, and again, it depends on the journey and depends on the land, but there are many, many times where the journey has required a specific soul family group to come together, that all of them carry different codes in their energy field, all of them carry different roles, and it's that specific combination that is needed. Sometimes, for example, you might be activating an old temple knowledge or reinitiating an old temple, and what's needed is the a group of people that were actually in that temple at that time.
That's amazing. And also, sorry to interrupt. Also, you know, like I feel I am, my understanding is that a lot of these kind of PowerPoints have been closed off. The energies have been distorted as part of what we've been through, you know, during the last age. So is it a case of kind of reactivating perhaps some more aligned intentions, you know, for sacred places, that kind of thing?
All sorts of things. Again, it's very specific to the place, but what, you know, you have a mixture of things. Power sources are power sources, and they do get plugged into by all sorts of things. And so a big part of land work is actually cleaning up things that shouldn't be plugged into these power sources.
Yeah.
And I look forward to the day that that isn't such a big part of land work. But then we also,
Kahreela, I'm really sorry. I'm going to have to interrupt. I couldn't understand why it's all gone pale. And now it said my battery's low. I am plugged in, but I've just realized the socket is not turned on. Just give me a second. I don't want to cut off.
It's funny, we're talking about power sources.
Okay, so I'm not going to I'm not going to take that out then, because
No.
that is so interesting. Because I was like earlier, I was like, why is Kahreela? Why can I hardly see her? Because she went face. So I pressed the button because I thought that's really strange. And then I just realized it wasn't turned on at the socket.
But please don't take it out, because you know the land is very demonstrative in that way. And part of land work, honestly, part of Land Tantra is crazy synchronicity that will make you believe in magic. Like, you know, I was doing a talk the other weekend and I was talking about the soul needing silence. And then as I said that, the whole mic went out. And
So it's
the
like
whole...
we're not plugged in here. We needed to be plugged in. And it's interesting, before I did the you know, I'd been kind of like running around a little bit. I was running a little bit late. And it's like, you're talking about the earth, Sarah. Plug in, make sure you're grounded, make sure you plug in. So I did it literally like in my body, but I didn't do it in the socket. The message was probably both, but I only got half of it.
And so yes, sometimes we are meant to plug in. Sometimes a site needs a power surge. Sometimes there is not, you know, the age of separation, we're at the end of it, so we see it as we're seeing everything that's wrong. You know, we're in the grief process with it essentially. But the age of separation was an incredibly important part of our evolution, and actually, it's quite hard to create a landscape in this interconnected universe of separation. One of the things my guide was saying recently was that, you know, when they were, I have guides that are really, they're guardians of kind of the fabric of creation itself, and they were like, we really didn't know where to put magic in the age of separation.
Oh,
because magic is relationship, right? It is connection. So where are you going to put it so that separation can exist? And in the end, they said that they put it into separation itself. So they had to hide it in the kind of great void or the great nothingness. And what they were saying actually is that, you know, a lot of people now need healing on this, because how that manifested was, if you were going to be a witch, you had to be all alone and lonely and on your own in order to access the magic, because it's in separation. You could either be like a princess and married, or a witch. You know, magic itself was...
but we have like reminders, you know. I think part of this separation is we forgot to look, you know. We forgot to look for the magic, like, because, you know, rainbows, they're just the beauty of nature, the bountiful, you know, that is total, you know. It's like we live in the world of magic and miracles. We just forgot about it, you know. So it's an interesting one. we're getting near the end. I'd love to just tap in just before we finish to the plugging in thing, because it came through really, really strongly. And I feel it is really important because we are having we're being bombarded by new energies, new frequencies, just everything that's going on in the world is really tough on our nervous systems. And plugging into the earth is just such a key component for discharging, for calming, for feeling nurtured and nourished and supported. How do you feel the best, most simple ways to do this are for anyone listening that's perhaps feeling that's feeling, oh my goodness, it just keeps coming? How can we really plug in?
I think that the intention is brilliant alone. Like you've said, all of these downloads, all of this stuff, it's got to be embodied. And if it's not embodied, if we're not living it, then it's just rain falling through us. It's not, And one of the things that my guides gave in a recent course, which is just, it has been life-changing for me, is they were speaking about safety. And they were talking about the fact that actually the times when we've attempted physical ascension in the past, we have failed at it because of our nervous systems. Our nervous system programmed to survival mode, and
so
they
programmed.
cannot, our ancestral nervous system cannot cope with the ascension process. Is just
that's so powerful. I mean, we need to be rewired for new earth ultimately. So we have to be so gentle and kind to our nervous systems.
And one of the things they were saying is, if you want safety, you have to have daily rituals for safety. If you do not let your nervous system know you are safe, then of course you are going to be in survival mode.
Yeah.
Their suggestion, which I just think is so simple, and it has been so profound for me, is that the first thing, so they explained that whatever you do when you first wake up is where you set your nervous system to.
Yes.
So if you turn your phone on and look at your emails and get stressed out about HMRC emailing you about your tax return, that's where you have set your nervous system to for the day. That's
and even just, then we get drawn into social media and the news and just that bombardment that starts our day,
And their suggestion for setting your nervous system is to get up, get out of bed, and go outside and put your bare feet on the earth.
Amazing.
And then smell the earth. So what your bare, we know from reflexology, your entire body is connected to your feet, and also your soles are your connection to your soul being on earth. And so by doing that, you are letting your whole system know that you are safe, to be present, that the earth is here, that everything is okay. And then when you smell it, your nervous system, when you smell it, it does something to your nervous system. You actually feel your nervous system plug in to Gaia.
That is so powerful. and I mean, also in terms of our circadian rhythm, we are having so much distortion to our circadian rhythm because of the blue light, because of our screens, and that disconnect from nature that's happened. And one of the best ways to reset your circadian rhythm so it is more aligned with the rhythms of nature is turn off the screens, and lights, be more in the red lights with those rhythms of nature best as we can. I know it's really difficult in the winter. We're kind of in the UK turning off everything at 4 p.m. It's just not going to happen. But as part of that reset is when we wake up, get outside, be in the natural light, it all helps to reset that circadian rhythm that we've become so detached from.
And it helps to create relationship with the earth, because the thing is, all of our worries really, they come from the separation from the mother. And I go as far as to say that I believe the leadership crisis is because Mother Earth is meant to be our leader. And if we're not in relationship with her, then we're following mad kings. And so, and that, it's a commitment, it's simple, it's something that you will notice more space. If you do it, you will notice that there is more space in your system throughout the day. Since it was guided, I've only not done it maybe 4 times. And those 4 days, I was so much more stressed. I'm now like, I am doing this. This is my priority. And sometimes it's raining and sometimes it's cold and sometimes I'm in a hurry. But just that consistency, it's also training my system to
Beautiful.
prioritize safety.
It's so important. You also mentioned something just before we finish. You also mentioned something that's really important there, the disconnect from the mother. And, I do a lot of ancestral healing, and that is healing our ancestry, which is, of course, is also very connected to the land. But there's this realization that I have is that, yes, we can work on our ancestry, to heal that relationship with our mother, our grandmother, her mother, that maternal line, but also the paternal line, that also needs a lot of healing. There's a lot of talk about the missing masculine, so it's how can we bring that back into relationship as well. So the healing of both the masculine and the feminine being part of that journey into New Earth. But ultimately, sometimes when there's just so much distortion, when we really take responsibility for our own healing, when we say this stops with me, when we stand with our feet on the earth and say this stops with me, there is so much we can do, but it may well be that wounding down the line, that takes a little bit longer. And I think when that is the case, that's when we really feel, okay, Mother Earth, Father Sky. And that's where the healing can really make that bridge, even if it's just a temporary thing whereby, later down the line, the ancestry really is. It's really interesting. This is definitely clearing something in my system, this conversation. I keep coughing. So, yeah, I'm just interested on your take of that healing of the masculine, feminine that happens through us and also through the land.
So I think the healing of the masculine and the feminine is essential to the new earth. And because we have experienced both of those energies in separation from each other, and that what most people would call the shadow of the masculine and the shadow of the feminine, they are the separated versions of these energies. And the uniting and the merging of these energies is part of how we embody new earth within ourselves. And absolutely, wounds take time. You actually need them to take time. When you're talking about the laws of the physical creation, if something changes too quickly, all that's going to happen is a hole will be ripped in reality, so
yes.
we need things to evolve at the pace of the earth, especially these structures that are foundational to the old reality.
Yes.
So that we don't have a hole ripped in the physical dimension. I will say that one of the things I love about Land Tantra is it takes you to angles and perspectives you don't necessarily go to. So the example I'll give is the last Egypt tour, which, you know, I thought it was called remembering receptivity. So I thought it was all about the feminine. And we get into it and suddenly it's all about the masculine. And
Oh,
are going on and on about the militarized masculine
oh,
and how, you know, when you actually think about it, we are, all of our recent ancestors were militarized. So it's not a surprise we don't know what the sacred masculine is, because we were all raised by militarized men by at least 2 generations ago, you know.
it's a distortion. Yeah.
And there was this one moment where I was in Egypt and I was like, you're talking about the militarized masculine, and I don't actually know what the opposite of this is, you know, like what is the masculine when it's not militarized? And the guides, they were like, Kahreela, it's the mothered masculine. And then it was amazing to me because, you know, that journey was all about goddess Hathor. And the real name of Hathor in the Egyptian language actually translates as House of Horus. And Horus is the great masculine kind of king of the pharaoh's energy. And so her coding is the coding of the mothered masculine.
And we come back full circle, you know, the mothered masculine, it's that connected, that dance between the masculine and the feminine, the masculine as the protector, the feminine as the nurturer. And, you know, that dance between the masculine, feminine could become could be called Tantra. So
yeah.
Land Tantra. So that's absolutely beautiful. Thank you. It's just been such a sacred journey. Do you have any last comments before we finish up today? And how can people find you? I'm going to put your links in the description below.
I would say that if you resonate with the militarized masculine, one of the most powerful things you can do is invite your masculine energy to stop protecting your feminine energy and start supporting her, and invite your feminine energy to stop rejecting your masculine and start supporting him.
Beautiful.
This is inner activism, and also one of the fastest ways to create a new earth inner landscape in yourself and your energy. In terms of finding me, I have a business called Starlight-Temple.com, which offers ceremonies and courses. And I'm in the process of creating landtantra.com. So that will be
amazing. Oh, thank you so much. I feel like we've been packing it in the end here. And Kahreela has kindly offered to do a series of channeling. She channels the Rainbow Grandmothers as well. And she's kindly offered to do a series of channeling that will be coming out next week and in the following weeks and months. So do watch out for those as well, because they're going to be incredibly powerful. So thank you so much, Kahreela, and thank you everyone for listening in today. It's just been such an incredible, wonderful journey and initiation into working with the land as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you, and thank you for the incredible light you are shining and the wisdoms that you are bringing together. This show has such a exquisite field, and it's because of you and your heart.
Oh, thank you. I just feel so honored to just have to talk to all these incredible people. It's just such an honor. So including yourself, Kahreela. So thank you so much, and love and blessings to you all. Bye for now.